I'm sure many of you have heard that the global crisis of 2008 was preceded by a huge real estate boom, where banks started to hand out mortgages like crazy. What's more, you've probably heard that this whole crisis started with the collapse of one of those legendary big US banks, Lehman Brothers. But did you know that Lehman Brothers never gave out a single mortgage in its entire history? What would you think if I told you that, contrary to popular belief, the global crisis of 2008 did not begin with the banks, nor with the supposed greed of the financial system, but that its origin, its real origin, was in a political decision taken from the 1990s with the aim of fighting poverty? From here on, VisualEconomik fans, the questions are clear. What really created the financial bubble? What did Lehman Brothers have to do with it all? And above all, why did the entire global financial system collapse overnight? Listen up. Imagine a political measure that would make it possible for even the poorest person in a country to own a house. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Well, don't worry, because you don't have to imagine it too hard. That measure, or rather that package of measures, really existed, and they were implemented in the mid-1990s in the United States under the Clinton administration. And contrary to what you might think, this attempt to help the most disadvantaged was precisely what started the most significant real estate bubble in history. How could things get so out of hand? How did such a seemingly good intention turn into such a nightmare? To understand this, we must first introduce you to two of the main players in the financial bubble, which, although they sound like the names of fast food or ice cream brands, are two of the largest banks in the world, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. These two US banks were created for the sole purpose of providing cheap mortgages so that US citizens could own their own homes. And the truth is that, as intended when they were conceived, for several decades, these banks succeeded in making housing more affordable for American families. However, as you can imagine, things started to go wrong with the arrival of the 1990s. The reason? The then young president, Bill Clinton, wanted every American who wanted to own a home to have one. Everyone without exception. You could say that, in a way, he wanted to push the founding goal of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae as far as possible. Well, just like now, before 1995, banks had restrictions for being able to give a mortgage. They asked for a down payment that was at least equivalent to 20% of what the house was going to cost. For example, if you wanted to buy a $100,000 house, the bank could lend you $80,000 at most, so the remaining $20,000 had to come out of your own pocket. Clearly, this was a barrier to Clinton's plans. Not all families had the ability to save 20% of the value of their new home. So, let me ask you a question. What brilliant plan do you think the president came up with? It was very easy to eliminate this legal barrier in one stroke, first by reducing the down payment from 20% to 5%, and finally in 2000 to eliminate it completely. But take note, because that wasn't the end of it. Good old Clinton came up with an even more radical idea so that everyone could own their own home. This idea is what you may have heard referred to as ninja mortgages. Now then, what on earth is a ninja mortgage? In short, ninja mortgages are nothing more than the result of Clinton allowing the guys at Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to give mortgages without checking or guaranteeing their customers' ability to pay. In fact, the Clinton administration prohibited institutions from investigating the credit history of certain customers, thus giving rise to, shall we say, opaque, subprime mortgages. You had no idea what kind of lender was behind it. But okay, whatever, what does this have to do with ninjas? Well, you see, the word ninja, apart from being the name of the legendary Japanese assassins, is used as an acronym for people with no income, no job, no assets. In other words, after Clinton's reform, people who would never have been able to get a mortgage were able to access them. Yes, I know, it sounds crazy, but you know that reality is always stranger than fiction. And if that wasn't enough, Clinton also forced these two government banks, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, to make 50% of their mortgages ninja mortgages. And take note, because that's not even the end of it. It was not only about who signed these mortgages, but how these mortgages were structured. Specifically, some types of mortgages that became very fashionable at the time were mortgages with moratoriums and arms. In case you don't know what they are something like mortgages with reduced installments during the first years. A very juicy type of mortgage used by bankers to attract clients. Are you tired of saving for a down payment? Too young to pay for a mortgage on your own? Relax, we'll give you all the money you need. And for the first 5 years of the mortgage, yes, the first 5 years, we'll give you a 50% discount on the installment. This way, you'll have time to find a better job than the one you have. And even if you don't have the money to make your payments now, you can just pay us later. Remember, it's already in the 21st century. Take advantage of our offer. Buy your house now. And don't wait for prices to go up. The best time to buy your house is now. So, what are you waiting for? Remember that the real estate market market never goes down. And after this exciting advertisement, we come to the most curious part of it all. I mean, it is true that the public banks under Clinton's orders started to give out ninja mortgages by the bucket load. But it turns out that private banks had also joined the ninja bandwagon. And I wonder, why on earth would a private bank give mortgages to people who they knew would probably not be able to pay them back? Did they want to lose all of their money? The answer is obvious. No, they didn't want to lose their money. In fact, they had a great strategy to earn even more. And this is when we get to the Ninja Circle.
The Ninja Circle.
VisualEconomik fans, the Ninja Circle was nothing less than the strategy used by financial institutions to get rich at the expense of ninja mortgages. First, the commercial banks took it upon themselves to give out lots and lots of mortgages, with no filter whatsoever. Due to this, many people were able to access mortgages easily, triggering the demand for real estate. So the price of housing began to rise without the brakes on. Next, if a ninja defaulted on his or her mortgage, it didn't really pose a problem for the bank, because after the price increase, the bank could resell the defaulter's house and recoup the mortgage money at a profit. And of course, if the houses were resold, it was because other ninjas bought them, and they bought them thanks to the easy mortgages offered by the banks, and so the circle was complete. If you notice, in order for this circle to work and keep rolling, a fundamental condition had to be fulfilled, the condition of the ninja creep. In order for the circle to remain unbroken, house prices must be kept rising forever and ever. And knowing this, you may be wondering, so did this system work to provide housing for everyone? Well, yes, it did. It turns out that in 2005, Americans bought 6 million more homes than in 2000. To give you an idea, 6 million dwellings would be enough to give a home to each and every citizen of Madrid and Berlin combined. But where did all these houses come from? Well, in fact, many of them were newly built, which in turn provided work for millions and millions of people. As an illustration, in Spain, the tourist country par excellence, during the real estate boom, the construction sector provided more jobs than the tourism sector. But relax, VisualEconomik fans, I know what you are thinking. That's all well and good, but in the end, this whole house of cards arrangement ended up falling down. So the question that we have to answer is, how exactly did the problem start? What was the beginning of the collapse? And above all, what did Lehman Brothers, a bank that was not even in the mortgage business, have to do with it? Well, let's find out.
The surprise packages.
If you have noticed, until now, we have not talked about a fundamental part of the Ninja Circle. Where did the money for the mortgages come from? I mean, yes, banks usually have their own money, but was it enough to be able to provide so many mortgages? The truth is, no. The banks had a problem if they wanted to keep the Ninja Circle going and keep lending in droves, and that is, the money to lend was running out. So what could they do to get a lot of money in such a short amount of time? What kind of scheme do you think they came up with? And it is here that the technique of the surprise package comes in, or being a little bit more technical, the mortgage package security. And what do these packages consist of? Well, imagine I'm a bank that has given out a lot of mortgages, both to ninjas and non-ninjas. But, oh wow, I've run out of money. So I'm gonna do one thing. If I look at all these people who owe me money, I realize that in total, I have given 100 mortgages to my clients, and between them, they owe me $10 million. That is money that belongs to me, even though I'm not going to get my hands on it for a few years. But of course, the problem is that I need the money now to be able to continue giving mortgages in my Ninja Circle. So since I don't want to wait, I can put half of my mortgages together in a little package and tell someone, look at this, all these people in this little package are going to have to pay me $5 million in 10 years. But if you give me $4 million now, you get to keep the little package of mortgages, and you will collect the $5 million owed to me in a few years. This way, you will earn $1 million of margin, and I will have my money now to continue with my Ninja Circle. A perfect plan, don't you think? Well, it turns out that in this perfect plan, there is still an additional advantage, and that is that by selling the packages, I will be offloading many ninjas, and I will be passing them on to whoever buys the packages from me. So if the ninjas don't pay, it will be the problem of whoever bought the package and not mine. And now comes the fun part. Can you imagine who was one of those famous package buyers? Exactly. This is where banks and investment funds come in. Banks like Lehman Brothers. VisualEconomik fans, Lehman Brothers was not your everyday bank, but an investment bank. And what exactly is an investment bank? In short, it's an institution that takes people's savings and invests them to make more money. Now then, how is it possible that a bank as important and seasoned in 1,000 battles as Lehman Brothers, which survived the American Civil War and overcame the crash of 1929, would buy packages that were full of little ninjas who were not gonna pay their mortgages? At this point, my friends, is where the character that completes the triangle of evil comes in: the rating agencies. Basically, these agencies were in the business of telling you how safe an investment was, or more specifically, in this case, how dangerous it was to buy one of these little packages and risk not getting paid by the ninjas. And can you imagine what they did? Indeed, they had no better idea than to give the best possible grade to the surprise packages, completely ignoring the ninja danger inside them. Specifically, it is estimated that by 2006, 24% of all mortgages were subprime. To give you an idea, this is more than double the total of 1998, when subprime mortgages accounted for only 9.8%. And yes, I know you are wondering, why did the agencies rate these surprise packages so highly? Well, obscure theories aside, which would be enough for an entire video of its own, the truth is that the ratings agencies had no experience in valuing these types of products, which were quite new in the market, and which were really difficult to assess. What's more, no one at the time knew exactly how dangerous the ninjas were, nor how many of them were in each packet. However, as we all know, the ninja spring came to an end, triggering the biggest financial crisis to date. But what exactly burst the bubble? For what exact reason could the ninja circle not be maintained forever? What drove Lehman Brothers into bankruptcy? We'll find that out right now.
The arrival of the crisis.
Remember the great ninja mortgage credo. In order for the circle to remain unbroken, house prices must be kept rising forever and ever. Well, as we all know, the Ninja Creed died a sudden death in 2007. And at that very moment, housing prices stopped rising. In any case, the question is why? What was the exact event that stopped prices from rising and started the crisis? Think about it. Even if access to credit is easy and everyone can buy a house, the price of housing reaches a limit where people simply prefer to stop buying and rent. But first, let's go back a bit in our story. It was not only about who signed these mortgages, but how these mortgages were structured. Specifically, some types of mortgages that became very fashionable at the time were mortgages with moratoriums and arms. In case you don't know what they are something like mortgages with reduced installments during the first years. A very juicy type of mortgage used by bankers to attract clients. By 2007, many people who had taken out these types of discounted mortgages had to start paying the full amount of their mortgage payments. Well, all of a sudden, many ninja customers were unable to afford their new mortgage payments, so they had no choice but to put their homes up for sale. And here comes the big question. What happens when everyone is selling houses at once, but far fewer people want to buy them? Well, indeed, housing prices plummet. Look at this graph. Plummeting prices meant that the ninjas who could not pay their mortgage could no longer sell their house in order to pay the mortgage. And obviously, the bank could not keep the house and sell it itself, much less if that house was in one of those small packages that Lehman Brothers had bought. But what do you think happens when an investment bank like Lehman Brothers has dedicated itself to massively buying up ninja mortgages that no longer pay? Can you guess?
Lehman Brothers files for bankruptcy.
The collapse of Lehman Brothers led to a full-blown banking panic that caused investors to turn off the credit tap worldwide. Yes, that's right, the whole thing shut down. That meant that the banks completely paralyzed their activity, to such an extent that well-known entities such as Barclays lost half of their value in the stock market in just 1 month. And you'll say, well, what happens if the banks stop lending? To begin with, what happens is that construction companies and workers in this section are gonna be flipping burgers, because new houses are no longer being bought. Next, if banks cannot lend to any more companies in other sectors, more people in other industries also lose their jobs. In the United States alone, more than 8 million people became unemployed. At this point, many of you may be wondering, if the banks ran out of money to lend, and on top of that, their customers were not paying them back, wasn't that a direct path to bankruptcy for the entire banking system? What would happen to all of the money that people had in savings if they went bankrupt? Well, VisualEconomik viewers, that's a question President Bush was unwilling to find out the answer to.
This rescue effort is not aimed at preserving any individual company or industry. It is aimed at preserving America's overall economy. It will help American consumers and businesses get credit to meet their daily needs and create jobs.
In order to prevent a financial collapse in the United States and Americans from losing their savings, President Bush pushed through the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008. Or, in other words, he bailed out the banking system with public money. Specifically, this act paved the way for $700 billion, of which $426 billion was ultimately invested. But how do you rescue a bank? Did Bush just give them money and that's it? No. In short, what the government did was to buy a good proportion of the ninja mortgages from the banks. In this way, it achieved two things. The first was to eliminate the risk of non-payment of these mortgages, and the second was to give money to the banks so that they could withstand the pull of the crisis without going bankrupt. Unlike other countries such as Spain, this bailout recovered $441 billion over the years, which, adjusted for inflation, served to compensate for the initial investment. In any case, that move provoked great controversy, which prompts the question, should Bush have bailed out the banks knowing that they acted irresponsibly? Is it an appropriate policy to bail out the banks? Well, if you think that a bailout of the banks with public money is indeed a bad idea, relax because you are in luck. There are alternatives to saving the banks, along with everyone's money, alternatives that could help us in the next financial crisis, and strategies that would solve one of the great problems of the economy. After all, why would banks avoid bubbles if they know that they will be bailed out when it all goes wrong? However, the alternative methods to the bank bailout will be explained in an upcoming video. Until then, you can leave us your thoughts on the matter in the comments. As always, don't forget that here on VisualEconomik, we release new videos every week. So subscribe to this channel and hit that little bell icon so that you do not miss any of our updates. All the best, I'll see you next time.